Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is dazzle. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear dazzle used is to mean to impress or amaze someone with a particular quality. So, the reason I chose this particular verb to discuss today is that it was used in a reading activity in one of my classes, and this was a new word for many students. So, we've been reading about Asian American and Pacific Islanders who've made these great contributions to the United States in a variety of areas. And this particular verb was used to describe certain qualities and characteristics that individuals have presented as they've kind of pursued their chosen path. So, for my class, we really focused on that impress. Like, this is kind of another way to say impress. And as I looked at how this word gets used, I want to mention that I found it really notable in terms of athletics and various artistic pursuits, whether it's singing or acting. You might encounter this particular verb to kind of describe the athlete or the artist's performance. A second way you might hear dazzle used is to mean to temporarily blind someone with a bright light. So, with this definition, sometimes people will use it to describe what happens when they are kind of unexpectedly hit with headlights or some sort of spotlight or other light and are momentarily or temporarily unable to see. You should know that dazzle is a regular verb. To make the progressive form, we need to drop the E before we add ing to form dazzling. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are going to be made by adding D since this verb already ends in an E. Our base verb, dazzle, ends in an L sound, which is a voice sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a D sound. It should sound like this: dazzled, dazzled. Now, normally we talk about phrasal verbs, but there really aren't any additional meanings that we need to study today. So that's going to allow us to focus on practicing this verb in the simple past tense and the present progressive or the present continuous. Let's start with the simple past tense. We use this verb tense to talk about an action that was completed at some known point in the past. And the nice thing about our affirmative structure is that it's going to be the same no matter what our subject is. So our verb doesn't change if the subject is I or she, right? It's going to be the same: I, you, we, they, he, she, it, all the same. Let's take a look at an example. Amanda Gorman dazzled people with her poetry at President Biden's inauguration. Now, as I thought about this verb, again, I was sort of thinking with that idea of impressing, and this is someone who popped into my head. Maybe you watched this video. I'll try and put a link in the comments section after I post this so that you can watch her speech. But they were incredibly impressed with the way she was able to describe things and the words she chose to describe certain feelings and thoughts and actions. So you'll have to watch it and see if you are dazzled by her poetry. Now, to make a negative sentence in the simple past tense, our structure is going to be did, not, and then the base verb. Okay, so here we're not using that ed form, not in the negative. Okay. You might hear some people combine did not into one word, the contraction didn't. You can see that in my example here. The substitute teacher didn't dazzle the students yesterday. Okay. So another way of saying did not impress. They weren't thinking like, gosh, we hope this person comes back and fills in for our teacher. Now let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple past tense. To do this, we're going to start with did, then we're going to have our subject, and then the base verb. So again, no ed ending here. The ed ending is only in the affirmative. An example here. Did he dazzle his interviewers with his answers? Right? So again, think of that meaning of impress, right? Where people go, oh, wow, that person has some special skills or uh, impressive strengths, maybe another way to think of it. Now let's take a look at the present progressive. We use this verb tense to talk about something that is happening now or something that is in progress. Some teachers and some books will call this the present continuous. That's okay. These two things mean the same thing. And to make the present progressive or the present continuous, we need two parts. We need a present form of be, and then we need that ing form of the verb. You can see that in my affirmative example. Her performance is dazzling audiences every night. Okay? So for some theatrical shows, plays, musicals, etc., they will do the same show again and again for a week, a month, or perhaps even longer. So this sentence is describing the show that is in progress, right? And that's why we're using the present progressive here. So her performance is singular, so I'm using is. If I was talking about maybe multiple people's performances, then I would change my be verb to are. Okay. Now let's look at making a negative present progressive sentence. To do this, our structure is again going to be a present form of be, so am, is, are, then not, and then the ing form of the verb. You can see this in my example. The headlights aren't dazzling me. Right? So here's that meaning of blinding. So I can see just fine. My vision has not been impacted by these lights. Finally, if we want to make a yes or no question in the present progressive, we're going to do this by starting with the present form of be, then we're going to have our subject, and then the ing form of the verb. You can see that in the example, are the athletes dazzling recruiters? So again, we're back to that meaning of impress, right? Many high school athletes have a hope of being able to play in college or play at a professional level. And so there are these scouts or recruiters who watch, and they're looking for people with specific skills or certain abilities. And so many times the athlete is hoping that they are impressing that recruiter or scout. Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb dazzle. The first word we're going to look at today is just the noun form of this word. If you hear dazzle used as a noun, generally it's going to refer to the brightness that kind of impairs or confuses our vision. And again, it's done just shortly. So this is not like I can never see again, just for a second or two, perhaps, I'm unable to see. An example of this might be the dazzle of the car's headlights blinded him momentarily. So maybe several cars had their brights on, right? And that can be kind of surprising, or it can make it difficult for someone else to see. Another related word, you might recognize this. This was our progressive form here, our ing, but dazzling can also be an adjective. So it might be referring to something that is extremely bright. So an example of this could be, their outdoor Christmas lights were dazzling, right? So extremely bright. A second way we can use this adjective is to refer to something that is impressing us, right? It's impressive, it's beautiful, it's skillful in some way. An example of this, we just watched the most dazzling performance by the symphony. Okay, so the music was beautiful, maybe it was impressive in some way. You've never heard this particular piece, or you've never heard it played in such a particular way. The last word we're going to look at is dazzlingly. So here you can see I've added the suffix ly. That should tell us this is an adverb. So we're describing something being done in an extremely impressive, exciting, or even bright way. Okay? So remember, we're going to use adverbs to describe verbs, but they can also describe other adjectives, and that's how it's going to be used in our example sentence here. For years, she sold a dazzlingly delicious menu of pupusas, tamales, and other culinary specialties of El Salvador at farmers markets. Okay? Borrow this sentence from an article I'd read recently, again, talking about someone who cooked this really impressive food, right? Maybe the food was exciting, perhaps new if you're not familiar with Salvadoran food. So here, dazzlingly, and as you can see, it doesn't roll off the tongue very easily, is describing the adjective delicious in that particular sentence. So thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.